This is the Note Closer Show, where you get the latest developments in distressed note investing and learn the secrets of how you can control millions of dollars worth of property for pennies on the dollar. Get educated and entertained by someone who has closed thousands of deals and lives to support you in achieving the same. Now, here's your host, CEO of We Close Notes, Scott Carson.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. As always, Scott Carson, your host. Excited to be here with you guys. I got a big shout out to our Note Nation family all across the country and in the 100-plus countries, for our international listeners out there as well. Big shout out to you guys for listening and sharing. And it's always amazing when you have different flags show up at your office from listeners from across the world. So thank you very much to our friends down in Brazil that sent a flag up here to the office recently listening there. So kudos to you guys. Want to give you a shout out. But today's episode and a very special guest is, I think, someone who's going to leave you in a little bit of stitches, having a good time and things like that. And you never know who you're going to run into in the podcast industry. And I have found that there are so many different twists and turns and people doing amazing things out there. And just a great environment. And our special guest today has an interesting background that will fall in line with what the Note Closer Show is all about. But also, she is on a path to bigger and better things and doing some awesome things right now. And our special guest, she's a stand-up comedian, actress, writer, and producer based in New York City. She's performed stand-up all across the country at comedy clubs and festivals, including the Old Ball Comedy Festival, Rock on Range, and more. She's also been seen on Fox, Dish Network, DirectTV, NBC, and many more channels out there. You can hear her every week on her podcast, Next to Madison, on iTunes, Spotify, and all the podcast platforms. The always lovely, the always amazing Miss Madison Malloy joining us today here on the Note Closer Show. Welcome, Madison.
Hey, I'm so excited that I'm on your show, Scotty.
Well, hey, we're glad to have you here too. And it's like I said, we never know who you're going to run into, networking online and stuff like that. And I think I sent you a LinkedIn message and you responded back and we go, hey, how do we help each other, podcasts and stuff like that? And then you told me your background. So before we dive into the funny bone of the business, why don't you share with our listeners out there kind of how you got to where you're at today and kind of your background in the mortgage-backed bond business that started off everything for you, huh?
Yeah. So I originally, when I was 16, my dad asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I don't want to be poor. He said, well, maybe you should go into finance at Wall Street. So I said, okay, well, that's what I'm going to focus on and major in. So went and studied that in college and ended up landing myself a job after school at an investment bank called Nomura Securities, where I was working in the residential mortgage-backed bond. So it was July 2005 to almost the end of 2007. So I was in a very interesting time when I got there in 2005. Things were rocking and rolling. There was a lot of subprime loans to buy and package and resell to other people. Not all good, but everybody was doing it. So you just kind of kept with the flow. And then during my ride there, it's kind of unraveled, as we all know what happened from there is, rates reset and people couldn't pay bills. And before I knew it, I was witnessing people who had, big houses and kids in private schools and everything kind of unraveling before their eyes. And it was that moment where you were like, nothing in life is kind of guaranteed. Mm-hmm. And is this really making me happy? Like, I'm chasing the money. I'm not chasing the passion. So at that point, I started to be like, okay, well, then I'll just go into hedge fund or private equity. And instead of going into private equity, I landed quickly at a pet website that we started, B2B pet thing where we were selling like dog bikinis and strollers. And don't even ask. Like, I was just like, okay, like it was a bitch selling a bitch. You know what I'm saying? And at that point, I'm like, you know what my dad said to me? If you could do anything in the world, what would you do? And I said, I would go around the world and make people laugh. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, it's a comedian. I said, that's absolutely ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. And so 6 months, he said, you should get on stage. You should get on stage. And I did. And it was like heroin. You just couldn't stop. And it's led to a lot of great things. It's led to the creation of my podcast. It's led to the creation of multiple TV shows I have in development right now that I'm hoping everybody will see this year. And meeting some of the coolest people. Still friends with some of my finance people who are still, in the business, so to say. And I am jealous when I go to their houses, but hopefully they'll be jealous when they come to mine one day. But it's good, but the particular industry that I landed in with the mortgage area, because of what we were doing, even though it wasn't illegal, I mean, I didn't do anything. I didn't go to jail. Right around 2011, 2012, like all the banks were kind of suing each other just to try and recoup something for their investors. So I would have private investigators calling me all the time, just trying to get information. I'm like, I was an analyst. Like, you do what you're told. Like, if somebody said take a dump on the floor and eat it, you're like, how much? You would do it. So it was one of those things. And they kept calling, and I was like, I'm a comedian. Like, I have nothing for you. Like, I talk about my vagina. Like, what do you want from me? Like, it's such a waste of time. So they finally went away. But it was a good run. It was a good experience. It made me more like financially sound in my own business. Mm-hmm. Just meaning like I understand the finances versus like a lot of my comedian friends are like, what do we do? So, pardon me. So it was good. Everything kind of happens for a reason. Sometimes I think if I stayed in the mortgage back business, I maybe would have a house already, but not living on the street. Let's just put it that way. But I want a big home with a pool.
Well, and then I think everyone likes that idea, the family, the American dream, home ownership, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2.5 kids and a dog or a cat.
3 bedrooms, set your sights higher, jeez.
Well, you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying, right.
And we have so many investors that are on this, that listen to the podcast that are in the note space. They're buying distressed debt. We're working it out on a smaller basis than where you were at. But it's still, you see a lot of strange things happening out there. You see a lot of things in the market, especially with what's going on right now with the market rebounding and coming back. I was a mortgage banker back in 2004 to 2008 and saw so many crazy things. I was like, what? You're financing this? You're financing that? And we're starting to see the same things happen again and again. And so it's like, what do you do when the market turns south again? What do you do when things don't go the right way that you're supposed to? You know what I mean?
But I don't think it's going to be, I do think it's going to be as bad because there's so many regulations now with Fannie and Freddie and all that stuff. And basically it's a lot harder to get a mortgage before, like a stripper and her dog could get a mortgage.
Multiple mortgages if she wanted to, you know what I mean? I don't think it's gonna be nearly as bad, but like I was just sharing with somebody that I was talking to head in origination at Bank of America a week ago, and he was talking about how they're just slammed doing 100% financing, donating down payments, paying up to $7,500 in closing costs, and the phones don't stop ringing. And I'm like, that's not a good good thing. No donating the down payment on a Fannie Mae loan.
Really?
Yeah.
So they're just like, I guess we got to get this money rolling again.
Uh-huh.
It's always interesting because all this whole mess started back in 98, with the whole long-term capital management ordeal. And then when the banks got bailed out, it was interesting though, when all those banks bailed them out. Remember how Lehman said, no, we're not bailing you guys out. Screw you.
Yeah.
And then of course, who went under in 08?
Mm-hmm.
Karma's a biatch. I know what these investors can do. They can come invest in me.
Well, there you go. You're doing some great stuff out there, and that I've got some friends in California that are doing that as well. I may need to hook you guys up there.
I would love that. Why not? Great minds think alike, right?
Exactly. So let's talk a little about that, because you made a 180-degree turn going from Wall Street to Laugh Street. Over a little bit of time, and I was gonna say Wall Street to Main Street, but that didn't work. But Laugh Street, I really like that aspect of things. But you've, in a lot of entrepreneurs, we get a lot of people that go from working a job to being an entrepreneur and stuff like that. There's hardships on either side when you make a change. What'd you find being financially savvy is a great thing, but is there something that really kind of like, you struggled with making that leap, or being focused in an unfocused kind of area for the most part? You know what I mean?
The lack of security. When you're working for a bank, obviously you get benefits. You had health insurance. All of a sudden, I was paying for the crappiest health insurance. You become totally broke. You don't know what to do. You start to try to identify. I think a lot of people start to identify themselves with their success and identify themselves with what they do. If you go out to a bar in New York, it's, oh, I work in finance, or oh, I work in technology, and all of a sudden you are somebody that's unknown in the art world, and your identity kind of starts to struggle a little bit because the money in the bank is going away. And I did something where I was like, I am going to, basically like sell my 401k and just take a risk. It wasn't something I planned on, but are you still there, Scott?
I'm still here. Yeah.
Oh, all of a sudden I couldn't see you anymore. So I was like, where did he go? But yeah, so no, it was quite the change of just like the security, and all of a sudden that was gone, and you really had to kind of believe. And also, when you start something as an entrepreneur, you never think it's going to take as long as it does. And that's the shitty part, is that you just don't. You're like, well, what's going to happen and all that jazz.
Right.
So,
and yeah, and I'm sure you probably dealt with like, okay, I've identified as this over here, and having to kind of be the new kid on the block and kind of start from the bottom and work your way up for a variety of reasons, right?
Oh, absolutely. So it's just, yeah, you got to just really believe in yourself. And there's a lot of times that like I didn't believe in myself, to be honest with you. But I was lucky I had parents who believed in me and kept saying like, no, like, don't give up. But I remember when I called my dad and I was like, I'm going to stop doing Wall Street. He was like, good for you. But when I told him I wanted to stop telling dick jokes, he was like, no. I gotta tell you, and I gotta share this, but one of the reasons when I was in finance, I really truly felt like I couldn't 100% be myself, right? And I have a face that doesn't totally match who I am, right? Like I have this face, like I look like a kept woman in like Greenwich, Connecticut, right? But like it couldn't be further from the truth. And so when I was in finance, like some of the guys used to say to me like, oh, we didn't invite you out to like dinners, or we didn't invite you out to certain things because we're like, oh, we're going to scare her, we're going to offend her, not realizing that like the stuff that was going through my mind, the reason I was so quiet is because I felt like I was one dirty joke away from getting fired. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm just going to stay quiet, blah, blah, blah. But yeah. And then once they finally found out, they were like, are you kidding me? Like, why? And I was like, I don't know. But I really just like couldn't feel like I could be myself until like the end when I was leaving. But that's what I loved about comedy is like, you get to get up there. I mean, you can't go to Wall Street and be like, hey, Kathy, nice tits. But I can get on stage and point it out. So it's nice. It's nice to be able to compliment people how they should be complimented.
Well, you're 100% right, because I think a lot of the very stuffy, very PC, I think we've gotten in society these days, gotten way over being the PC aspect of things, the knee-jerk reaction with everything going on. And I think everybody just needs to lighten up a little bit and be able to joke about things. That the idea of joking or having an opposite opinion is no longer celebrated. It's right. Oh, you don't agree with me? Screw you. Die. You know what I mean? It's not the same thing as like, oh, we can agree to disagree and laugh about it. Right.
Right. Which is like, I mean, we see that every day with politics. And it was just like, listen, some people like green, some like purple, agree to disagree. Who gives a shit? Move on. Like, it's just a different opinion. Right. Like, it doesn't mean you're right or wrong, Right. But yeah. So, who's gonna give me a mortgage?
Bank of America give it to you. It sounds like there for you. I mean, we're seeing subprime, we're seeing arms back again. The thing I know that Yeah, 5171 arms have been back for a while, actually, over 2-3 years now.
So what do you do? What's the income level now to qualify for a subprime?
Oh, you're gonna crack up. I've seen like banks giving loans out at like 520, 550 FICOs. You know, yeah,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, and some are you even have that kind of that Alt A paper. You know, they got a lot of firms that are getting in that aren't true banks are coming on that midsize and doing the Alt A stuff that are, hey, if you put 5-10% down, we'll finance 90-95% at a decent rate for you. So it's you know, it's not quite as extreme it was when we start seeing pick-up pays or option arms coming back in the you know, the field again. That's when I know that, hey, Armageddon's about to happen again for the most part. So
Yeah, because it was all those like second lien loans, right? That kind of really spun out of control, especially the subprime. Because those rates, remember how they give you like a really low rate for like 2 to 5 years? Sometimes, what did they have 10 years second liens? I think maybe they
well,
did.
yeah, they had 10 years, 20 years. They were pretty common with 15s on the second liens. But what was really crazy was all the option arms that they give you you only had to make a partial interest payment. It was your primary residence. You could only pay 1% interest. And if your loan was at 6%, we'll just take the 5% and put it on the face amount of the loan so that you're losing equity every month. With the idea that the value of the properties can keep going up more than the negative AM. And, you know, yeah, I mean, we got to thank California for putting that, you know, piece in place so people could actually afford to make afford a home out there versus what a traditional 30-year they can't afford for the most part.
I know, which is true. It obviously made home ownership, because even like I live in New York City and it's very expensive here, and it is, if you can afford to put a down payment and buy a place, it's actually your monthly cost is going to be probably cheaper than rent traditionally. But I think the thing that stops people is like the down payment.
I mean, that's the thing. It was sad is already, we're seeing statistics where 1 out of 10 Americans are already 30 days late in their mortgage payment. You know, they're not talking about that. 85% of Americans are one missed paycheck away from being in default. So you see a lot of things happening, but what you also have is a crunch. That middle class is getting thinner and thinner because the extra jobs are going away with Uber and automated teller machines at McDonald's and all these other things that are taking place where people used to make money that's on a side hustle. So.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Wall Street like deals with the defaults this time. You know?
This time, yep. I mean, they're calling subprime loans non-prime now. You know, credit default swaps are back. They just call it a different thing now. You know, they're just taking the label off, slapping a new one, and you know, let's go from there. Let's ride this thing as far as we can. We got bailed out last time. We'll get bailed out again, I think, you know?
I know. It's just a crazy world. But yeah, I remember like the whole, yeah, it's definitely an interesting world. It's definitely like interesting to be in the industry I'm in now, like compared to what I've gone through. But sometimes I think like if I had stayed in your business, how different my life would be. I'd probably be a bitch, maybe.
Not as happy as you are right now doing something that you love. I think everybody falls into that quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be better if I like was doing something I love with like a husband that paid my bills. But I'm an independent woman right now, so
there you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, question I have for you, kind of coming back here. Did you, when you decided, hey, you were going to go this route, what did you do to start to market yourself? What did you start to get your name out there? What was kind of that look like? How long did that take to kind of start where you were getting asked to be on gigs? What was the day in and day out grind like for you trying to get started?
Well, you were trying, like, obviously you started with open mics, and then social media was a big help. So you get yourself on there, and you just kind of network and produce. I was producing shows as well. I did porn for a little bit, which was fun. I'm just kidding. I did not do porn. Don't even try to Google it. You won't find it. I didn't do it. I probably should have, but no, I'm kidding.
That's a whole different next to Mallory.
Right. Exactly. That's it. Yeah, that's going down on Madison right now. But, yeah, no, you just kind of in meeting production companies, and I'm also a writer. I've got a couple like scripted projects in the works, and then I started meeting like really cool people and started developing reality shows around them, which I absolutely adore and love, because it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta change their lives and change mine at the same time. So it's like a team effort, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone to some of the coolest rock concerts, which is fun. So you're always trying to get yourself out there. Obviously, I haven't mastered it, which is why your listeners are going to be Googling, going, who the hell is blah, blah, blah. But it's, going on shows like this and just trying to put yourself out there as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
They always say it only takes one. Wait for that one.
Well, that's the thing. We're all one relationship away from exponential growth taking place, or something big happens. So, hey, if you're listening out there and you're in the movies and you're looking to produce some stuff, we've got an eager person here ready to rock and roll there for you, who's doing some great things.
You got to remember, yes, I've got a lot of great ideas, a lot of cool things. Luckily I've hooked up with some really cool production companies that I've built good relationships with, and even though we can hit bumps in the road naturally in production, as you do, like in any business, you just learn to kind of how to maneuver those and deal with them and come up with the next great idea.
Yeah,
So,
well, I think it's a big thing. I mean, all entrepreneurs will face that bumps in the road. I mean, I think some people are scared of those bumps in the road, so they never take that first step, or they start, get themselves out there to start taking action, because you learn the most from the failures that you have along the way in the successes.
You know what? Somebody sent me this thing. Joe Rogan had something on his podcast where Whitney Cummings was talking about a theory called terror management theory. Have you heard of this?
I've heard a few mentions of that before. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was basically just like, apparently all of the things that we operate on, like no matter what we're doing, we operate because our biggest fear is dying. And then once you get rid of the fear of dying, then like things become easier, so to say. So like everybody's like trying to get awards, trying to make business deals, trying to like make money, trying to buy a huge house, trying to be seen, trying to be validated, all to like help mask this fear that you're gonna die. Mm-hmm. Like I'm still looking into it, but it's basically like once you get over that fear, it's kind of like you release yourself to just be like, okay, I can do this for the right reasons versus the fear, the underlying fear.
Yeah, I think I think you hit it right on the nail on the head. A lot of people will do or won't do things because of their fear, their comfort level. I'll never go and do that open mic night because I'm scared of standing up in front of everybody. I'll never go for that interview or put a job application out or go do something because I'm comfort where I'm at. They might tell me no. Yeah,
or date that person that you think, like a lot of people sometimes, will say like, oh, I couldn't get that person. Like, how do you know? So it's kind of like putting yourself out there, or even like, pertaining to your listeners and your show. It's a lot of people are saying like, I wouldn't be approved for a mortgage, so they don't even go out and try and get one. Mm-hmm.
That was actually an interesting story. When my first loan I did back in 2002, was with my parents. I got a loan license, and here in Texas, all you had to do was basically pass the insurance license and then write $125 check to the state, and you were a loan officer if you wanted to do it originally.
There you go.
Yeah. And I was working with my parents, like, why haven't you refinanced? Because their interest rate was still like double digits, and I'm like, they're like, well, we can't afford the closing costs. Like, well, you can roll this in, or you can do this stuff. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. And so that was a big passion. What became a passion was my father actually cried at the closing table because we rolled their credit card debt in, some of the things off, and set them up on bi-monthly payments or bi-weekly payments. And they were able to, instead of being in their house for another 22 years, we had it paid off in 7 for them for $500 less a month than what they were paying. And so it was just they had a lot of equity, which is great, but it was just one of the big things that people just don't know and are scared to take action because myths and, I'm not suitable enough. And so, yeah, my dad actually teared up at the closing table. And if I wasn't already the favorite kid, I sure as heck was then at that point,
Well, exactly. And I think, and that's maybe happened to me a little bit too. It was, it's that whole, like, I'll do this when, when this happens, then I'm going to buy a house. When this happens, I'll like go and try to get a mortgage. When it's like, I think if like with your show, obviously you're educating people to where it's like, oh, okay, maybe I can actually look into this. Maybe there's an opportunity out there for me that I didn't know about. And that's what's great about all these like different structures that they put in place, and like the bonds that they've done is that they've gotten very creative on how to make money, but also how to make it more affordable for people to actually own homes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree to that. I mean, there's goods, the good side, but there's also a lot of bad sides if you're not educated on what you're signing on and what's going on with the market and things like that. I mean, it's I see stuff. I'm like, you got qualified for this, or you haven't made a payment in 6 years. What the heck is going on? And that's what we deal with primarily as the non-performing stuff, where somebody hasn't made a payment in 6 months or greater. And I got a portfolio in from a bank where just the other day, where they had made a payment in New York, lived in New York, hadn't made a payment in 72 months.
How was that? How did they not get like kicked out?
The bank never started the foreclosure process, or the bank sold it off to somebody else, and somebody else wanted to go through the process of foreclosure. So somebody's just chilling, not making payments, or they might make a payment every once in a while, and it resets the statute of limitations for another 4 years, and so they're good to go.
Their credit score must be a wreck.
They just don't care. They're at a point where they just don't care. I was sitting in here's a funny story. I was sitting in Fort Lauderdale, flying out of there, and there's this guy sitting across from me, and he had like the most flamboyant shirt on I could see, and we got to talking a little bit. And I go, well, what do you do? He goes, oh, I make these lip gloss things for women. I was like, oh, I make pretty. He goes, oh, yeah. And then he asked me what I did. He's like, oh, you would love my story. I have a $1.5 million mansion over here, and I took a line of credit out for it for $500,000 because the market went up. I went and bought a house, paid cash for $500,000. And I said, heck with my $1.5 million, never paid a dollar dime on things. And I'm like, okay, so you basically mortgage fraud. To cash out and then I have to pay. He goes, yeah, they could have. He goes, all right, I still have it. It's cheaper for me to pay $1,500 a month to my attorney to drag the foreclosure out for a couple of years than it is to pay the $10,000 to $15,000 mortgage payment each month. And so there's people are taking advantage of the systems if they know what they can do or can't do.
Yeah.
And just crazy.
That he just totally admitted that to you.
He didn't care. He's like, oh, I don't care. I'm like, hopefully I don't buy your mortgage.
Well, I know. I remember I wasn't on the tape cracking side. Remember do they still call them tapes?
Yep, still call them tapes. Yep.
Yeah. I guess so on that side where they would basically like go through and be like, shit, good, shit, But I was on the origination side where we would talk to the mortgage or the brokers and buy those pools. And it was interesting. I know a couple of my the people I worked with they didn't get in trouble, but they went to court. And they were telling me that some of the emails that were read, they were like, I didn't mean that, like one email was like, why don't you go get as fucked up as these loans we're buying or something like that. And he was like, it's a joke. Like what? Like,
Yeah. We've seen some of that stuff as well out there. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the fun stuff you're doing now. You've got the Next to Madison podcast, which is just awesome on there. Go out and listen to it, guys and gals out there. You've got some amazing guests on there. Like I mentioned, was just listening to the founder of Ashley Madison is one of your first episodes. And then of course, listening to Alan, who's one of my favorite basketball players of all time. You've got such an eclectic group of guests on there. What's your kind of your way of putting them all together? I mean, you get some great insights. I mean, absolutely great conversations. But what's your focus with that? With the Next to Madison podcast?
Well, as far as like getting the guests, like originally when I started it, I always found, I don't know if it's because I look super wealthy, like I just have like resting rich face. I'm not even kidding. That like, do you know what it's like to have a face that doesn't match your bank account? Like it's So I always had like rich people were like very drawn to me because I looked like one of them, right? And they're like, oh, you're one of us. So I would always have these interesting conversations. I would always meet the most interesting people. I'm the type of person at the airport that's going to like strike up a conversation with you. And I just kept saying, God, I wish I could bring these conversations into the world. So I was like, I'm going to do it on my podcast next to Madison. And through that, I've just been able to, you know, reach out to people and have met amazing people. And it's led to some really cool things. You know, with Ashley Madison, I reached out directly to him because I was just kind of fascinated by the whole story of what goes on, and like, does this guy like have a moral compass, or was there something more to it? And what I learned from that is that women cheat more than men, which I always thought was the opposite. And it's actually tailored to women. And I guess the truth of the matter is, like, if you're going to cheat, you're going to cheat. You know, that was just providing a safer platform. And then I've had really great people on, like Anthony Scaramucci, who talked about his time in the White House, his very short time in the White House. But I got him right before he like had his big blowout with Trump. So he was all, you know, kind of like, oh yeah, the children are great, blah, blah, blah. And then everything kind of turned. But then I had his wife on because I wanted to find out why she filed for divorce and what the story was behind there and how they got back together, which is cool. And the basketball player, which I was kind of helping out with a project, and he came on, and just to hear his story. I've got an episode coming up, not this Thursday, but next Thursday, with the photographer for Trump's presidential campaign, Jean Ho, who now has a book. Very, very interesting story. Definitely tune into that. It's a story of, it ultimately became a story of getting a dream job to surviving purely based on the fact that people didn't agree with you. So when Trump got elected and they knew that he was behind, like took his photographs and worked for him, people in turn started boycotting him, and his life was completely turned upside down. So he really gets into how he survived and what got him through from basically being on the brink of suicide for just having an opinion that was different from the majority, from people around, not the majority, obviously, or Trump wouldn't have won, but and what a scary time we're living in. So definitely tune into that, because he's a really, really amazing guy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Definitely. I mean, you've all got great episodes. I like Alan Houston talking about, you know, hanging out with Muhammad Ali, meeting him as a kid and stuff like that too. And that's a great story. And just everything, how he met his wife before he moved to New York, as he talked about that. I love it that you don't pull punches. You were like, oh yeah, you moved to New York. What is it up with all these NBA players cheating on their wives all the time? And yeah.
I mean, it's the truth. Like, but that's the thing is, like, what I feel like makes like my, like, because I get into the story. Like sometimes if I'm having somebody on my podcast, the first thing I'll do is look at other podcasts they've been on or TV shows they've been on, and then I listen to the questions and I avoid asking those questions. Mm-hmm. So I want to make every interview unique, right? So like Gene Ho has been on Fox News a lot because he has a book called Trumpography. And his PR person had sent me questions, like sample questions or guided questions. And then I remember watching him on not Hannity, who's the other guy? They're all older.
O'Reilly or something like that? Or
no, not O'Reilly. It was Huckabee show. Yeah. And I was laughing because I was like, wow, okay, they just basically ripped these questions straight through the teleprompter. And as soon as I heard him asking those, I was like, nope, because it's already been out there, right? And so, you know, the first question I always ask my guests, out of respect, because I want my guests to be comfortable and to know that I'm on their team and I'm on their side, is there anything that's off limits? Sometimes they will tell me yes, and then you just avoid those. Sometimes they'll tell me no, and which is always fun. And like with the president's photographer, I mean, we basically got into like suicide, and how your opinion can totally derail your life, even though it's not wrong or right. You know, it's just your opinion. So very, very interesting survival story there. I've got a doctor who's really heavy in the research of Alzheimer's coming up as well. I had my eggs frozen. So I had the doctor that did that come on and talk about that whole process. And yeah, just a lot of fun. I mean, and then I've had like this girl, Jennifer Tracy, who's this amazing writer and has like this book coming out, and it's eventually going into a series about a dominatrix. And we had a lot of fun because, you know, I basically kind of told her about different stories, and like my celebrity crush is Elon Musk, and I really want him to come on my podcast and my face, and you know, just having fun like that, and there's different stories that happen in the Hamptons, and you know, I probably should have asked you, is this a clean podcast?
Totally fine. Totally great stuff there. Totally great stuff.
Oh, Musk, come on my face. I'm just kidding.
You know,
That would be a bad place for him to come if he was going to come with me, because he's worth a shit ton of money. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, he's about to be. I was reading an article today that if they adjust one thing or something like that, he's about to be the richest guy in the world after Amazon, with the way that Tesla did their truck launch or anything like that. The mad scientist out there, he's just proves the point. You don't believe everything you read, but understand that, hey, so a lot of times if people have a lot more, or they're thinking 2-3 steps ahead of everybody else for the most part. So
I know it's crazy. I mean, I would love to have him on the podcast. I would love to have Jeff Bezos on the podcast. And just like, you know, the thing about these super wealthy people is their mindset is very different from 99% of the mindsets out there, right? We live in a different world where we're like, we need a, you know, for example, we need a mortgage. We can't afford this, or we need to just save this to get by, and we're trying to make sure we have enough for retirement. And that is the majority of the world. But you take people like Elon or people like Jeff, and their whole mentality around money and around things are very different, right? Like their focus isn't on saving and getting by. Their focus is on the next deal and generating. And I really do feel that how you feel about wealth and how you can really kind of generate or amount to the amount of risk that you take, because both Elon and Bezos did not, like, they took a huge risk. Like it could have completely backfired in their face and they could have been broke.
totally. But I think once you've been broke and overcome that, you're not afraid of being broke, because you always can make.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2010, with everything, I sold everything I owned here in Austin, Texas. Sold everything. I mean, I had a garage sale, sold a house, sold everything except my dog.
Wow.
Jumped in my truck and drove across the country, which I thought would be 30 weeks going to ballparks, turned it into 3.5+ years and changed the way my whole business. So I'm not afraid of a downturn, because I know I can make money. I know I can and do something different and survive. And there's a liberating aspect of going back to, you said, your fear of death or failure keeps and limits a lot of people. And
well, it does. I think I think that thing of the fear of management of terror is basically like you take the thing you're the most afraid of and you take the power away from it. And like I as an artist have been dead broke multiple times, and now it's kind of like, well, I got through that and I can always survive. So it's like, I'm not scared. I'm going to go and take a risk. Like I'm really into certain products, and I'm like, yeah, I could go start a product. Like I could go meet the right people. Like, but there's a lot of naysayers out there too. Like, oh, if your income's not this, you can't get a mortgage pertaining to what you do, or, you got to have a lot of money to be able to do that. And once you take that fear out of it, you're like, okay, that's your opinion, but moving on. And you just go do it.
Such a truth out there. We know who your crush is on there, but if you had a comedy crush or a comedy person that you look up to, who's had a big influence on you, who would that be?
I mean, originally it was Joan Rivers, who it still is, but obviously she's no longer with us.
Right.
One of my favorite comedians, female comedians, is Ali Wong. I think she's just so funny. There's so many great female comedians. And then Bill Burr, I just think, because he just doesn't hold back and he kind of says it how it is. And I really respect people that can just kind of say, well, this is how it is. You either agree with me or you don't. And they have that confidence that's kind of like, I'm not for everybody, but I like me. And it's hard to get there as a human being, I think. I struggled with my confidence for a long time. And really worked on it, and it's hard to sometimes sit there and say, I don't care what people think, even though we all subconsciously do. And that could be a big reason why people are buying, which is the big reason actually why people are buying homes that they can't afford, because it's this thing to like please people or create this image that's not them. Like, people need to like me. Maybe they'll like me if I'm rich, or they'll like me if I portray this image, and then they end up not being able to pay their bills, and they get into a huge pickle.
The whole keeping up with the Joneses aspect of things, you know?
Right. That's why I just keep up with myself.
There you go. There you go. Now, what was the biggest thing that helped you increase your confidence level, Madison? I mean, you said I think a lot of people struggle with it. You know?
Honestly, being rejected constantly can either make your confidence really, really low, or it can just be like, okay, I have nothing to lose. And another thing I think is age. I think that we are all afraid of getting older because like being older, especially as a woman, is like not a great thing. You want to be young and sexy and blah, blah, blah. But like being older for me, like I'm not that old yet, but like just getting older is like you start to give less of a fuck. And you just realize what's important, and that, you know, like having perfect hair, perfect whatever, it's like, that's not what's really important. And you just kind of tried it. But there's days, you know, I got on this podcast and I was like, should I wear my hair down? Do I have makeup ready? You know, but then you get over it.
Well, that's, I think, is happiness, being comfortable in your own skin and being comfortable and just being you.
I mean, trust me, there's still like things I have to figure out. Like, you know, I still like, you know, one day, like when I have my career figured out, like, which is like, getting very close, like then, you know, hopefully I'll settle down and kind of have more stability that way. I'm going to get a doggy. That'll be my first baby, my fur baby. Yeah. So it's you just gotta have faith. You know, I had a day today where a couple things kind of went off course, but, you know, it's just like, okay, breathe and have faith and just realize that it's all going to happen the way it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I might be crying later over a margarita, but I'll be fine. No.
Hey, who doesn't want to drown their tears in salt and lime? You know, margarita is a great place to go there for you.
Right. Luckily, I'm not on my period, so I won't be crying. But, no, sorry.
Where, if you could paint a picture of where you're at in 5 years, what does that look like?
It looks like a house.
Margaritas?
No, no, because I don't really like sugar, but a lot of Coors Light. I love Coors Light. Hopefully, I can actually be on a Coors Light billboard. I would love to be sponsored by Coors Light because they're my Colorado beer where I grew up. And I would love to have a home that's big enough to where my friends can come and visit me and stay and, you know, be married, have kids, and be making shows and changing people's lives and having shows and movies on air. And I think the next 5 years are going to be really, really fun. And I'm not fearing the future. I'm embracing it and being excited for it because I can only go up from here.
Well, you've done a great job. You're out with gigs and doing comedy in the city and other places, and you're making a name for yourself and rock and rolling. And
exactly, like I'm not destitute at all, but I'm not a household name yet, which I would love to be. But for me, it's not being famous; it's putting out great work.
Yeah,
putting out work that can inspire people. Like the scripts I write are very story driven of inspiration and survival and getting through that. Reality shows are people that I really, really just feel they have a story and they need a bigger platform to tell, and that we can spin it in a unique way through their abilities. So yeah, it's interesting, and I still love doing the comedy because I still have that dirty mind outlet, which I'll always have. You know, I'm what's that famous song? I want a lady in the street, but a freak in the sheet.
A freak in the sheet, or a freak in the bed. Yeah.
Like I'm a freak on the street and a lady in the bed. No, I'm not.
Good stuff there. Good stuff there. Are you?
Can I please touch you?
Are you?
Nice ass.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Out in public, I'm like, nice ass, Kathy.
There you go. There you go. Very nice. Are you going to be in Austin? Are you coming down for South by Southwest with everything you're doing with your pilots and stuff like that?
I'm not scheduled to, but I'm hoping that will change and I can get down there because that would be super fun to be able to sit down with you in person and go to South by Southwest. That would be awesome. I have an aunt that lives in Austin. Great freaking town. Awesome city. Yeah,
definitely. Well, if you make it down, let me know. We've got some great stuff lined up. We're actually doing a podcasters meetup that Wednesday night and some other fun stuff down here. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll introduce you to some of my friends that are down here too that might be able to help you out with some things. So,
I love that. That's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, that's what Austin's all about, having fun and doing some cool stuff. What's the best way for people to reach out to you, find more about what you got going on and the projects you got in the works?
Yeah, so they can go to my my website, Madison Malloy, MALLOY.com. I have a podcast website, which is nexttomadison.com, which is also the name of the podcast. They can find on all the platforms. My Instagram is Madison Malloy Comic. I post a lot on my podcast, but some fun bikini pictures when I travel, and lots of Coors Light pictures. Yeah, and Twitter at Madison Malloy. I've got email contacts on both websites, so they can reach out and I'll get back to them. And if they, have an interesting guest that they want me to interview, let me know and I'll see what I can do.
Awesome. Good stuff there. Well, Madison, thank you so much for coming on the Note Closure Show. Just a fun conversation. We gotta have you on again at a future time and crack up and hang out some more. It'll be a lot of fun.
Love that. That would be so much fun. And I'm going to have you on Next to Madison too. But
I'm excited.
On you.
There you go. Exactly. I'll tell you who my crush is. But
right. I'm going to guess. Somebody with really big tits. Do you like blondes or brunettes?
I'm a brunette guy.
Sophia Vergara.
She's pretty. Yeah, she's pretty. Yes, she's nice.
She's pretty hot. I wouldn't.
I agree. Pretty hot. I agree. Very, very hot. Yes, very much so. Very much so.
I wouldn't pick her out of the bed, as you men say.
Good stuff there. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on here and having a blast. We look forward to your increased success along the way and all the things that we're going to see from you in the near future there for you, Madison. So,
thank you, and thanks to all your listeners for listening to me.
Yeah, definitely. Guys, go out there, check out the Next to Madison podcast. Great stuff, great interviews. Give her a review when you're over there and subscribe. Definitely, it's on my binge list. Been binging it the last couple of days and look forward to the newer episodes are coming out as well. But you can catch her at nexttomadison.com and check her out at all the other places. Otherwise, go out and take some action, guys. Don't be afraid to make a pivot and make some changes. If you're unhappy, face fear in the face, take away the power that fear has, and go take some action. And we'll see you all at the top, everybody. Bye.
Bye.